Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.
All right, let me take you spot on a correction. What is happening in Nigeria and what we've been seeing in different election circles is not a challenge. It has evolved into a political culture. So it is our culture, and it's going to take a lot for us to reorientate generations that are yet unborn and generations on ground to come to the understanding that that is not how politics is supposed to be played. Democracy and the style of governance that we have borrowed from the West doesn't play democracy that way. So it's better we start seeing it as a cultural problem and not as a problem that has to do with either the structure or either the ambitions of people. So we have to go to the grassroots to actually address that issue. If we take that problem, if we see that as a problem and give it the proper definition, if this is part of our culture, what can we do culturally, to rejig the system and to make people realize that politics, I repeat 3 times, shouldn't be a do or die affair. What we are seeing in the country today that is responsible for this kind of political culture, a culture that is marinated with a lot of violence, a lot of me too, a lot of it is my turn, a lot of I am the one, if not me, it can't be anybody else, is something that I think evolved from the 60s. And since then, we've been vacillating between a political culture and system that, in my view, has moved from being toxic to being diabolic. And now it's becoming very, very esoteric because you find a lot of things happening within, party primaries, within parties that are supposed to be having a high degree of internal democracy. These things are absent. And it really begs the question, what is the future of democracy in Nigeria?
That will just be the next question. But I want to know nobody came to give them
Deliver ballot papers,
then
yeah.
the next thing they had that somebody had won. I mean, how is that for democracy?
Well, that begs the question, like I said, on internal democracy in different political parties. But why are we where we are? I mean, where are we to start with? We've defined that. It's a cultural problem. Why are we where we are? Where do we want to get to? And how can we actually get there? Now, we are where we are today because we inherited a constitution that was designed by some military folks. And they designed that constitution to pave the way and the path for them to return to power when they drop their khakis. That is why we are where we are. Let's not speak too much grammar about this. Let's not do too much ado, like Shakespeare will say, on this subject matter. We have a constitution that does not support proper democratic structures, proper democracy, proper, competition. Politics and democracy should be a competition of ideas, and it should be a contest of ideas and a competition between ideology. So if you don't have a constitution that has the basic catalyst for us to have proper governance, good governance in the system, for us to have the best amongst us, winning elections, contesting elections, and not being able to contest elections because they have money. These things are not obtainable in the West. You don't become the presidential candidate of a political party, say the Republicans or the Democratic Party in America because you're a money bag. No, you go through a system. You must have been studied. You must have understudied others. But in our country today, we don't have that kind of system. We have somebody that wakes up as a billionaire and decides he wants to answer Senator XYZ, and he has the money, and he's able to buy himself through the system. So the Constitution should be reviewed so that we can actually have proper democratic ethos, proper democratic values, and a re-engineering of the system and a better culture to take the country forward.
What specific portions of the Constitution will you be referring to?
I'm not an expert in political jurisprudence. That is not my core competence. So asking me that question is taking me out of what I've been studying in the last 30 years, from sociology to management to strategic management and to business economics. Yeah. It is very glaring that the Constitution of Nigeria, even by the fathers of law in our country, people like Afe Babalola, people like so many of them have said, look, we need to look at this constitution again. This constitution is not our constitution. The first vignette of the constitution says, we the people of Nigeria. Who were the people of Nigeria? Let's go back to history. I'm a student of political history. At least in 1979, through to 1976, we could identify those, the Akinjides, the late professor from the East that was recently buried here, and the man that was known as the law himself. These are people that we know that fashioned out the constitution. Some of them, I think one of them that just passed on the great beyond recently, has even come out to apologize that they made a mistake in the way they fashioned out that constitution. That it's not a constitution that has the federal posture or character that it's actually supposed to have. But come back to 20 years afterwards, 1999. Please, who are the senior advocates? Who are the lawyers? Who are the legal experts that we, you or I, or anybody in Nigeria can point to as those who extrapolated from 1979 Constitution and designed the 1999 Constitution and gave us that Constitution for us to run with as a nation today? Our problem is constitutional. Our problem is cultural. Our problem has to do with the character and the soul of the nation that cannot take this nation to the promised land, if indeed we have any vision of getting to any promised land.
Now, in Ondo, a winner as a man, I wanted to look at the psychology of politics.
Well, politics makes strange bedfellows. When you are coming into politics, you come with all your cards on the table. And we have designed a new lexicon, a new word in our political lexicon in Nigeria, which we call the power of incumbency. All right? So the incumbent, if he's up for re-election, would have the different paraphernalia of office, will have state resources to be able to mobilize resources, mobilize, the electioneering system processes in his or her favor. Now, is that politics? I tried to study that incident in the last 24 hours, and I'm not an EFCC apologist. I think to a great extent, they are doing the best they can do to stabilize the polity, to fight financial and economic crimes. But what I saw from what was read, if what I read can be trusted, is that this case was already there a long time ago, possibly after the death of the incumbent, the erstwhile governor. I think it's better called Arakunri. What's his name now? Oluwarotimi Akedere. Fantastic individual, not by any way perfect, but in every sense of the word, a political maverick. But let's come back to what is on ground, the status quo. Now, the arrest of a member or a key participant in the primary, coming at the point in time it came, when you study the two sides of the story, what I read is that these accusations or these allegations and that led to the summoning of this individual, to be specific, have always been there or have been there before the primaries. And the EFCC spokesperson did say, from what I read, and I do not want to be quoted, neither do I want to quote the reliable source or the source that I actually got that from, said that, well, they had to respect the fact that the individual was contesting in the primaries so that it would not look as if the arrest was politically motivated, and so that their arrest would not in any way influence the outcomes of the primaries. Now, if what I read and what I have said and what was quoted by EFCC spokespersons or the public relations arm of the EFCC is correct, I think we should give some credit to the EFCC for trying as much as possible to be apolitical, all right? To not perpetuate any actions that will be seen as having a political undertone. So it will now be left to the EFCC to prove their point against the erstwhile Commissioner of Finance, who was a major contender in the last APC primaries. It will also be left to the APC to actually show that they are a party. That is what are being voted for. I reiterate and I state here that I'm not a member of any political party. I always do my own analysis without any fear, favor, and with very, very high degree of political unbiasedness. So the APC has a lot to do because these little off-cycle elections actually give us a picture of what we should expect in 2027. And I think what has happened in Ondo State so far, let us not say that we have the final word on that. Let's give it a couple of days to run through and see what the NWC of the APC will actually come out to say at the end of the day.
Last question. Is it not possible that
All right. In the social sciences, we call it the cause and effect. All right. So the supposed observation that we usually do not have free and fair elections is an outcome. It's very important that we look at the causes before we make a conclusive statement on what this outcome seems to have been since 1963, over the last 60 years. Now, there are certain indicators that predict political culture, political participation in a country. And it is the kind of culture that we have in Nigeria. It is the degree of political participation that we have in Nigeria. It is the degree of political mobilization that we have in Nigeria. It is the type of political party systems that we have in Nigeria that is responsible, that put together are a predictor of whether or not we would at any point in time have free, fair, and properly representative elections. Elections that actually depict the will of the majority of the Nigerian people. And what are some of these factors? Let's start with the most important that affects you and I. Money. The Nigerian political system, Nigerian political culture, the Nigerian political party system is overly monetized. Now let's come to you and I. If we want to contest elections in 2027, let's even start from maybe the gubernatorial or maybe our houses of assemblies. Now, the least political party in Nigeria would go and ask you and I to bring about 10 to 15 million naira to purchase a form. It will therefore mean that if we do not have sponsors who in the Nigerian political lexicon take the name of Godfather, we may not be individually able to afford to purchase elections to first and foremost contest, to be eligible to contest in the primaries. Akin to the problems of monetization of politics in our country is the problem of poverty. The poverty rate is very high. And so it is so easy for you to manipulate citizens with as little as 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 naira, all right, to be able to influence and sway their decisions on which political party they should actually vote for or in what direction the votes will take, either in the primaries or either in the general elections, whether for the state or the presidential. Now, you bring that and marry that with the degree or the level of illiteracy in the country. Presently, Nigeria is dealing with an illiteracy level of 55%, plus or minus 5, at least 50%. And those that we even claim are literate, your level of education should be portrayed in the degree of your character. In other words, we have people that carry so many degrees in Nigeria. We have a problem, an epidemic of people going abroad, going to neighboring West African countries to now purchase doctorate degrees so that they can answer doctor. But having a degree does not translate to you having a pedigree. And so what we are finding out now is that we have men and women who have humongous degrees, who have big degrees that they cannot define, that they cannot defend, but these men and women are individuals, citizens that lack pedigree. And when you have people that lack pedigree in a political system that are supposed to be captains and co-captains for the ship that drives the destiny of a nation, that drives the destiny of a state, that drives the destiny of a local government, that drives the final destination of an entire people, what do you expect will come out of such processes? It will definitely be the perpetuation of a do-or-die politics, the perpetuation of a politics that will be crystallized, that becomes polychromatic with rigging, violence, assassinations, and all sorts of vices.
Why are we not thinking of using technology as a way of reducing the tension?
Yeah, because technology would expose the culprits, and the culprits do not want to be exposed. And where technology becomes a better catalyst for facilitating freer and fairer elections, people definitely will not vote for that. So we will continue to have the manual system, or we will continue to have a situation whereby people will try to manipulate technology in the favor of their candidates or in favor of the political party. And that in itself begins to compound the Nigerian problem. So what is the Nigerian problem? The Nigerian problem in terms of the political context revolves around the fact that rather than have politicians with pedigree, we have politicians that are building personality cults around themselves And the people who, of course, are blinded by poverty, by illiteracy, and by the inability to be perspicuous, in other words, to be able to understand basic certain things, compounds our problem, and we'll continue to be where we are. But I think that with the generations that are coming behind, with the enlightened ones that most likely will join politics in the nearest future, there should be some light at the end of the tunnel.
With nearly 20 contestants in the primary election, which in itself, sounds
the Nigerian populace, those that are politically active, those that are politically sensitive, should start shifting their paradigm. And what kind of paradigm shift am I actually advocating or calling for? The citizens should start looking at politics and politicking on the basis of a competition of superior ideas, or the contest of superior ideas, and on the basis of the competition of superior ideology. Until we begin to drive our politics, our democracy, on the pivots of ideas, ideology, and what you did mention, innovation, we will continue to have pockets of this kind of situations and violence and this negative political culture that brings no positivity in any sense of the word in our system. So my advocacy is that the citizens should be educated right from the primary school. We should start having political education. Civic education should be returned back into the curriculum so that we can start seeing politics, seeing politicians from the perspective of what ideas are you bringing to the table? What is your ideology? Does it align with my interest? Does it align with the interest of my unborn children and of my future? And finally, inculcating innovation into our political, system, and ensuring that we have, the best of technology to drive the process.
Lastly, how do you see this impacting 2027?
Well, 2027 is some 1,000 days away from where we are today. And I think that, speaking as political strategists, this situation that we have found on ground in Ondo State doesn't particularly speak well of our preparedness for 2027 and doesn't particularly speak well of the party at the center right now. So I think the off-cycle elections in both Ondo and Edo State will be a very, very good opportunity for the ruling party to launder its image and to show that they are a party with a high degree of civility and with high degree of values for human life and for sanctity and for due process. That should be the challenge for the ruling party.
But even they have a chairman who is now being dragged here and there over some dollar issue. I don't know if you mentioned.
Well, with respect to what is happening to the present chairman of the ruling party, APC, I think I want to take a constitutional protection from looking into that issue. And I'm protected by the Constitution not to speak or to speak. Let the party handle that issue. I'm not going to speak into internal intrigues that are beclouding the sense of values of a particular party. If they know what is right, they know what is proper, they should do what is right and what is proper. I am not a member of that party. I'm not a member of any political party. I don't think I am in a position to advise them on what to do with respect to past incidences that their chairman has been involved in. But for the future politicians that are coming, it is something to recourse to. It is for us to remember that whatever we do today will not be forgotten and most likely may not be forgiven. So we should always have our moral armor on and do what is right and live for more superior, higher, and eternal values so that we can always, at any point in time, go back to a door that we have left locked and open it again because we have a good name and not because we have political clout.
Lastly,
well, what is our present political philosophy? Our present political philosophy is that which is centered around what the popular Ayo Fayose introduced with the concept called stomach infrastructure. So the average Nigerian voter, the average Nigerian politician thinks first and foremost of his stomach, of his livelihood, of his next paycheck, instead of the interest of generations yet unborn. I think what Nigeria is lagging in terms of political philosophy is a nationalistic ideology, nationalistic point of view. We do not have too many statesmen in our country which we can today vouch for and say are nationalists. Statesmen in the order of the Azikiwe's of this world, the Tafa Balewas of this world, the Awolowas of this world. These men of character, these men of pedigree, these men of high political, and intellectual capacity and capabilities are lacking in the system today. So what we need to begin to develop as a philosophy is a philosophy that is anchored on populism. And by that, I mean a philosophy that actually resonates around the idea that sovereignty should be the hallmark of any democracy. And what does that mean? The concept of sovereignty means, or is interpreted as a concept that simply states and simply puts is emphatic on the fact that political power belongs to the people. So when the Nigerian people begin to realize that the power and the people that we put in political offices actually belong to us, and we should be able to give them direction and should be able to censor their character, we will begin to find a proper way out of the political doldrums and economic morass that we found ourselves. So we cannot dissociate our economics from our politics. Our politics in Nigeria actually affects our economics. And that is why even the IMF is predicting that a year or 2 years from today, Nigeria may drop from being the largest economy in Africa to becoming the 4th largest economy. And why are we going to find ourselves at that? Because our politics has not been mainstreamed in the order of macroeconomic populism, and that is what we should be thinking of. And that will also be reinforced when we pay enough attention to educating our people and for the leaders, the present crop of leaders, to become catalysts of what I call LBE. And what is that? Leadership by example. Thanks for having me on.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.